Johnny Carson was in the middle of his monologue when Ed McMahon quietly said, "Johnny, I need to tell you something." And the entire studio stopped. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Studio 6B at NBC in Burbank. March 17, 1983. Another Thursday night. Another packed audience expecting laughs. Another monologue crafted with Johnny's signature timing, setup, punchline, that look to the camera, Ed's booming laugh providing the perfect punctuation. For 30 years, this had been the rhythm. Johnny and Ed. The host and his sidekick. The straight man and the amplifier. They perfected it to an art form. Johnny would deliver the joke, Ed would laugh in exactly the right way, and America would laugh with him. But tonight something was different. Johnny was 3 jokes into his opening monologue. Something about the economy. The audience was laughing. Doc Severinsen had just played a musical sting. Everything was normal. Perfect. Exactly as it should be. Then Ed leaned forward from his chair beside the desk. Not the performative lean he did for comic effect. Something else. Something urgent. "Johnny," Ed said, his voice cutting through the laughter, not loud but impossibly clear. "I need to tell you something." Johnny stopped mid-sentence. His hand, which had been gesturing to emphasize a punchline, froze in the air. He turned to look at Ed, really look at him, and something in his old friend's face made everything else disappear. The audience fell silent. Not the expectant silence before a punchline. The confused silence of 300 people sensing something had just gone wrong. Johnny's eyes searched Ed's face. 30 years of working together had taught him to read every expression, every tone. And what he saw now made his throat tighten. "What is it?" Johnny asked quietly, his host's voice completely gone. Ed's jaw clenched. His eyes were glistening. "Not here. Not like this." Carson stopped mid-monologue. The entire studio froze. The control room erupted. Director Bobby Quinn was shouting into his headset. "What's happening? Did Ed just go off script? Do we cut? Do we go to commercial?" Producer Fred DeCordova stood frozen behind Bobby, staring at the monitors. He'd been producing The Tonight Show since 1970. He'd seen technical disasters, forgotten jokes, drunk guests, every kind of television chaos imaginable. But he'd never seen this. Ed McMahon breaking the fourth wall. Speaking directly to Johnny. With that look on his face. "Keep rolling," Fred said quietly. "Don't cut. Something's happening." On stage, Johnny had turned his body fully toward Ed, forgetting the cameras, forgetting the audience, forgetting everything except his friend's face. "Ed, talk to me." Ed shook his head slightly. "After the show. I'll tell you after." "No." Johnny's voice was firm. He stood up from behind his desk. Not the casual standing he did for comedy bits, but something decisive. He looked at Doc Severinsen and made a cutting gesture across his throat. "Stop the music. Stop everything." Doc lowered his trumpet slowly, confused but complying. Johnny turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need a moment. Ed, come with me." He walked off stage. Ed McMahon, who had never left that chair during a show unless scripted to do so, stood up and followed him. The studio sat in stunned silence. The cameras stayed on the empty desk, the abandoned chair, the confused audience. No one knew what to do. Backstage, in the narrow hallway between the studio and the dressing rooms, Johnny grabbed Ed's arm. "Tell me. Right now." Ed's composure, held together with sheer force of will for the past 5 minutes, finally cracked. Tears spilled down his face. "It's Victoria," he whispered. "My daughter. She was in a car accident 2 hours ago. They just called. She's in surgery. They don't know if..." His voice broke completely. "They don't know if she's going to make it." The world tilted. Johnny felt the words hit him like a physical blow. Victoria McMahon, Ed's youngest daughter, 24 years old. Johnny had watched her grow up. He'd been at her high school graduation. "Oh God, Ed." Johnny pulled his friend into an embrace. Ed, 6'4", former Marine, the voice that had introduced Johnny Carson to America for 3 decades, sobbed into Johnny's shoulder like a child. They stood there for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds. Studio crew members watched from a respectful distance, not knowing what to do, sensing they were witnessing something private and profound. Finally, Johnny pulled back, gripping Ed's shoulders. "Why didn't you tell me before the show? Why did you come out here?" "Because," Ed said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, "it's what we do. The show goes on. That's what you always taught me." "But then I was sitting there, listening to you do the monologue, and I couldn't pretend. Not tonight." Johnny's jaw tightened. "Get your coat. We're going to the hospital." "Johnny, the show can wait. This can't." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. But Johnny didn't just leave. He walked back onto the stage. The audience looked up, confused, expectant, worried. He stood at his desk, hands gripping the wooden edge, and did something unprecedented in 30 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He told the truth. "Folks," Johnny said, his voice steady but stripped of all performance, "I need to explain what just happened. Ed's daughter Victoria was in a serious car accident a couple hours ago. She's in surgery right now. Ed came to work tonight because that's the kind of professional he is. But I've known Ed for 30 years, and I can't ask him to sit here and pretend to laugh at jokes when his daughter is fighting for her life." The audience gasped. Some covered their mouths. Several were already crying. "So here's what we're going to do," Johnny continued. "Ed and I are going to leave now and go to the hospital. This show will end early tonight. And I want everyone watching at home to understand something." He looked directly into camera 1. "For 30 years, Ed McMahon has been the most loyal friend, the most dedicated professional, and the kindest man I've ever worked with. He's made me look good every single night. He's laughed at thousands of my jokes, introduced me with that voice that makes everything sound important, and never once asked for credit or recognition." Johnny's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. "So tonight, it's my turn to be there for him. Because that's what friends do. That's what matters more than any television show." He picked up a cue card from his desk. The blue card he'd been reading jokes from just minutes ago. He held it up to the camera. "This card has tonight's monologue jokes written on it. Tomorrow night we'll do them. They'll still be funny. But right now, they don't matter at all." He set the card down carefully, almost reverently. "Please keep Ed's family in your thoughts tonight. Thank you for understanding." The audience rose as one. Not applause. Not yet. Just standing, in solidarity, in respect, in shared humanity. Johnny walked over to Ed, who was standing just off stage, tears still streaming down his face. Johnny put his arm around his friend's shoulders, and they walked together toward the exit. That's when the applause started. Quiet at first, then building. Not the enthusiastic applause of entertainment, but something deeper. The applause of 300 people honoring friendship and choosing humanity over show business. Doc Severinsen stood at his bandstand, trumpet in hand, and began to play. Not the Tonight Show theme. Not a joke sting. A soft, gentle melody. Amazing grace. The band joined in, quiet and reverent. Johnny and Ed stopped at the studio door. Johnny looked back one last time at the stage he'd commanded for decades, at the desk where he made America laugh, at the audience that had given him everything. Then he walked out with his friend, leaving the bright lights behind. Backstage, he made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. The control room was in chaos. Bobby Quinn was on the phone with network executives. "I know we have 17 minutes of show left. I know we have a guest waiting. I don't care. Johnny's gone. Ed's gone. We're going dark." Fred de Cordova made a decision that would define his career. Air what we have. Show the empty stage. Show the cue cards sitting on the desk. Let America see what matters. And that's what they did. For the last 17 minutes of The Tonight Show that night, NBC aired the empty studio. The cameras slowly panned across the abandoned desk, the blue cue cards still sitting there, the chair where Ed had sat for 30 years now vacant. Doc and the band played soft, instrumental music. The audience sat quietly, many crying, all understanding they'd witnessed something rare and true. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Johnny and Ed sat in a surgical waiting room. Johnny had called his wife Joanna from the car. "I don't know when I'll be home. Maybe not tonight." They sat in those uncomfortable plastic chairs for 6 hours. Johnny got them coffee from a vending machine. Ed couldn't drink his. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. Johnny just sat beside his friend, a steady presence, the way Ed had been beside him for 3 decades. At 3:47 a.m., a surgeon came through the double doors. Ed stood up so fast his chair scraped backward. Johnny stood with him, hand on Ed's shoulder. "Mr. McMahon?" "Yes." "How is she?" The surgeon pulled down her mask. She looked exhausted. "She made it through surgery. It was touch and go for a while, but she's stable. She's going to be okay." Ed's knees buckled. Johnny caught him, held him up, while Ed sobbed with relief so profound it had no words. But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. The next night, Johnny opened The Tonight Show from behind his desk. Ed's chair beside him was empty. The audience was subdued, uncertain. "Before we start," Johnny said, "I want to give you an update. Victoria McMahon is out of surgery and recovering. The doctors say she's going to be fine. It'll take time, but she's going to be okay." The audience erupted in applause and cheers. Real, joyful, relieved applause. Ed asked me to thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers. He'll be back when Victoria is out of the hospital. Until then, this chair stays empty because nobody can fill it. Johnny reached over and patted the empty chair beside him. "But I want to show you something." He picked up the blue cue card from his desk. The same card from the night before. The jokes he'd been about to tell when Ed interrupted. "Last night, I said these jokes could wait. And they did. But Ed called me this morning from the hospital, at 6 a.m. mind you, because apparently visiting hours mean nothing when you're Ed McMahon, and you know what he said?" Johnny smiled, the first real smile of the night. He said, "Johnny, you better tell those jokes tonight. I wrote half of them, and I'll be damned if I let good material go to waste." The audience laughed. Real laughter. The kind that comes after tears, after fear, after relief. "So Ed, this is for you." Johnny delivered the monologue from the night before. The same jokes, the same setups. But between each punchline, he looked at the empty chair and paused, as if waiting for Ed's laugh that wasn't there. When he finished, he held up the blue cue card one more time. "Ed, I'm keeping this. Because it reminds me that some things are more important than jokes. But it also reminds me that friends come back, shows go on, and laughter returns. Always." He placed the card in his desk drawer. It would stay there for the next 9 years, until his final episode in 1992. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Ed returned 2 weeks later. When Johnny introduced him, "Here's Ed," the audience gave him a 5-minute standing ovation. Ed couldn't speak at first. Johnny just stood beside him, hand on his shoulder, letting his friend have the moment. Victoria made a full recovery. She attended every Tonight Show taping for the next year, sitting in the front row, her father glancing at her between every segment. The blue cue card stayed in Johnny's desk. After he retired, he gave it to Ed with a note. "For the night you reminded me what matters. Your friend always, Johnny." Ed kept it on his office wall until the day he died. Beneath it, a small plaque. March 17, 1983, the night the show stopped.